She challenged me to a duel, but when she saw my tattoo, she froze, and so did I. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood near the back wall, his eyes scanning the crowd of diplomats and politicians who had gathered for what everyone kept calling a historic moment. He didn't feel historic. He felt bored. His job was simple: keep Princess Amara of the Centauri Alliance safe during her speech to the assembled delegates. Stand in the right position, watch for threats, and try not to fall asleep while important people said important things that all sounded the same after a while. Jake had been in the Earth Defense Force for 8 years now. He'd seen combat on 3 different worlds, had earned commendations for bravery, and had somehow ended up assigned to diplomatic protection duty. His commanding officer had called it an honor. Jake called it babysitting with better equipment. The princess stood on the raised platform at the front of the hall, speaking about unity and cooperation between their peoples. She was young, maybe 20 years old by Earth standards, though Jake knew that Centauri aged differently than humans. Her skin had an odd quality to it, like it was made of compressed starlight. It shifted colors slightly as she spoke, moving from pale silver to soft blue and back again. Jake had learned that these color changes meant something to her people. Emotions, maybe, or emphasis on certain words. He hadn't bothered to study the details. His job was to keep her alive, not to understand her biology. The hall held about 200 people, humans mostly, but also representatives from a dozen other species. The Centauri Alliance was powerful, one of the major players in this region of space, and everyone wanted to be their friend. That's why this meeting mattered. New trade agreements, military cooperation, cultural exchanges. The kind of stuff that kept the peace but made for incredibly dull afternoons. Jake shifted his weight slightly, his hand resting near his sidearm out of habit. The weapon was mostly for show. Europa Station had the best security in human space. 3 layers of sensors, armed guards at every entrance, and scanners that could detect a weapon from 100 meters away. Nothing dangerous was getting into this room. He let his eyes wander over the crowd again. Front row, the Earth ambassadors in their formal uniforms. Second row, military brass from various defense forces. Third row, corporate representatives who saw profit in every handshake. Everyone looked appropriately interested in what the princess was saying, though Jake suspected half of them were as bored as he was. The princess's voice was pleasant, he'd give her that. She spoke English with only a slight accent, her words carefully chosen and diplomatically vague. She talked about friendship between species and the importance of working together. She mentioned scientific cooperation and mutual defense, standard speech stuff. Jake checked his watch. 20 minutes in, 40 to go. After this, there would be a reception where everyone would drink fancy liquids and pretend to enjoy small talk. His shift would end at 1800 hours. He could grab dinner at the station cantina, maybe catch a game if any of his unit was off duty. Just another day in paradise. That's when he saw it. Movement in the upper gallery where the overflow crowd stood. Just a flash of something that didn't fit. Jake's combat instincts kicked in before his brain fully processed what he was seeing. Someone was moving wrong, too fast, too purposeful. The person wore a maintenance uniform, the kind that let you blend in anywhere on a station. But maintenance workers didn't move like that. They didn't have that focused intensity, and they definitely didn't reach into their jackets the way this person was doing. Jake's body was already moving before he made a conscious decision. His enhanced training took over, the thousands of hours of drills and simulations that turned soldiers into something that could react faster than thought. He saw the object leave the person's hand. Small, metallic, following a perfect arc through the air. Everything seemed to slow down. Jake's mind calculated trajectories, distances, timing. The object was a grenade, had to be. Energy weapon, judging by the faint blue glow. designed to punch through personal shields and turn everything in a 3-meter radius into ash. And it was heading directly toward the platform where Princess Amara stood. The princess hadn't noticed. She was focused on her speech, on the crowd in front of her. The delegates were starting to react, but they were moving like people in a dream. Too slow. Everyone was too slow. Jake had maybe 3 seconds. 3 seconds to cross 15 meters of open floor. 3 seconds to reach the platform. 3 seconds to do something that his rational mind knew was suicide. He ran. His boots hit the polished floor hard, propelling him forward. People were turning, mouths opening in shock or warning. The other security personnel were reaching for weapons, but they were positioned around the room's perimeter. None of them could reach the platform in time. 2 seconds. Jake hit the stairs to the platform, taking them 3 at a time. The princess saw him coming, her eyes going wide. Her skin flashed through colors rapidly, alarm and confusion mixing together. She started to step back, probably thought he was the threat. 1 second. Jake crashed into her with his full body weight, wrapping his arms around her waist and driving them both behind the reinforced podium. It was built to withstand an assassination attempt, one of the few pieces of real cover on the otherwise open platform. They hit the ground hard, Jake twisting to take the impact on his shoulder. The grenade landed exactly where the princess had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. Jake knew what came next. His armor had shields, powered by a portable generator on his belt. They were designed to stop small arms fire, even deflect energy weapons for a few seconds. But a grenade was different. Too much energy in too small a space. The shields might hold, might. He didn't think about the might. He pushed away from the princess, putting his body between her and the grenade. His fingers found the controls on his belt, pushing the shields to maximum power. The generators whined, pulling every bit of juice they had. Jake curled himself into as tight a ball as possible, making himself into a barrier of flesh and technology. He had time for one final thought, oddly calm despite everything. At least it would be quick. The grenade detonated. The explosion was everything Jake had feared and worse. His shields flared to life, a bubble of energy that tried desperately to contain the blast. For a fraction of a second, it worked. The energy that should have vaporized him hit the shields and scattered. But this wasn't a normal grenade. Whatever it was, it had been designed to defeat exactly this kind of defense. The shields held for maybe half a second before the energy overloaded them. Jake felt the generators on his belt explode, felt the shrapnel tear through his armor. Then the real blast hit him. Pain. More pain than Jake had thought possible. His armor was supposed to be tough, rated for combat in hostile environments. It shattered like glass. He felt his ribs crack, felt something vital tear in his chest. Heat washed over him, burning through to bone. His last coherent thought was surprise. He'd expected to die instantly. Instead, he was conscious for what felt like minutes but was probably only seconds, long enough to know that he was dying. Long enough to wonder if the princess had survived. Long enough to hear her screaming. She was calling his name. How did she know his name? They'd barely spoken during the 3 days he'd been assigned to her detail. Maybe someone had told her. Maybe she'd asked. It seemed important somehow that she knew his name. The world was fading, going gray at the edges. Jake tried to hold on, tried to stay conscious, but his body wasn't cooperating anymore. There was too much damage, too much pain. He heard other voices now. People shouting orders. Someone was calling for medical help. Someone else was securing the area. All the things that should have happened 3 seconds earlier but were happening now, too late to matter. Jake's vision narrowed to a tunnel. At the end of that tunnel, he saw Princess Amara's face. She was leaning over him, her skin cycling through colors so fast it was just a blur. Tears were running down her face. Could Centauri cry? He hadn't known that. She was saying something, her hands pressed against his chest like she could hold his life in with pressure. Jake tried to tell her it was okay, that this was what he'd signed up for when he'd put on the uniform. Protect people. That was the job. He'd done the job. But his mouth wouldn't work anymore. Nothing worked. The tunnel was closing, the light at the end getting smaller and smaller. The last thing Jake Morrison heard before the darkness took him completely was Princess Amara's voice, speaking in her own language. He didn't understand the words, but somehow he knew what they meant. A promise. She was making him a promise. Then there was nothing at all. Awareness came back slowly, like fog lifting on a cold morning. Jake didn't open his eyes right away. He floated in that space between sleep and waking, where thoughts were soft and nothing quite made sense yet. He was comfortable, warm, and there was no pain. That last part seemed strange somehow, though he couldn't remember why. He became aware of sounds first. A gentle humming, like the background noise of a ship's engines, but smoother, more musical. Soft voices speaking in a language he didn't recognize. The rustle of fabric, footsteps on a hard floor. Everything sounded slightly off, like his ears were full of water. Then came the smells. Something sweet, like flowers, but not any flower he'd ever encountered. A clean scent, similar to the antiseptic smell of a medical bay, but more pleasant. And underneath it all, something he could only describe as alien, a scent that his brain had no reference for. Jake's brain started working faster. Medical bay, antiseptic. Why would he be in a medical bay? What had happened? The memories hit him like a physical blow. The conference hall, the grenade, the princess. Oh God, the explosion. His eyes snapped open and he tried to sit up, his body moving on pure instinct. To his surprise, he actually managed it. His torso lifted smoothly, no pain, no resistance. That was wrong. He should be dead. Or at least heavily sedated and strapped down with half his body missing. Instead, he was sitting up in a bed that felt like it was made of clouds, staring at a ceiling that looked like liquid metal flowing in slow patterns. The room around him was unlike anything he'd seen before. The walls curved in impossible ways, smooth and seamless. Light came from everywhere and nowhere at once, soft and gentle on his eyes. A figure moved into his line of sight, tall and graceful with skin that shimmered silver. Not human, Centauri. The realization made Jake tense, his combat training kicking in. Where was he? What had happened to the station? The Centauri held up long fingers in a peaceful gesture. Please, Lieutenant Morrison, do not alarm yourself. You are safe here. I am Healer Curran, and I have been attending to your recovery. Jake's hand went automatically to his side where his weapon should be, but found nothing. He was wearing some kind of soft robe instead of his uniform. Where am I? Jake's voice came out rough, like he hadn't used it in days. What happened? The princess, is she okay? Princess Amara is well, thanks to your sacrifice. She is currently speaking with her father, but asked to be notified the moment you awakened. As for your location, you are aboard the royal vessel Starfear, in orbit around our homeworld of Centauri Prime. How long have I been unconscious? Jake couldn't read them, but he could see his own body outlined in light, with areas marked in different colors. I should be dead, Jake said quietly, looking down at his hands. They looked normal, maybe a bit paler than usual, but definitely his hands. He flexed his fingers, made fists, rotated his wrists. Everything worked perfectly. That grenade hit me point blank after my shields failed. I felt my ribs break. I felt my chest tear open. She had you brought to our ship immediately and ordered that every resource be used to preserve your life. What did you do to me? I commanded them to do whatever was necessary, and they did. You almost died, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You were dead for 43 seconds before they stabilized you. Your heart had stopped, your lungs were destroyed, and you had lost more blood than a human body contains. But I would not let you go. I could not. Finally, the princess nodded, and the healer began to speak. Saving your life required more than simple medical intervention. Your injuries were too severe. We had to rebuild much of your internal structure, your ribs, your organs, your circulatory system. To do this with human tissue alone would have taken months, and you did not have months. So we used Centauri biotechnology. What does that mean? Your muscles have been augmented with fibers that respond faster and more powerfully. Your nervous system has been optimized to process information more quickly. Without asking me, I simply refused to accept your sacrifice. I didn't ask to be saved like this, he said quietly. I'm a soldier. If I died in the line of duty, that's an honorable death. That's what soldiers sign up for. That is what royalty does. You may not have asked for this, Lieutenant Morrison, but you have it nonetheless. Your mind is unchanged, your memories intact, but your body is now stronger, faster, and more durable than a baseline human. Your lifespan has been extended significantly. Where you might have lived to 80 or 90 years, you will now live for centuries. The word echoed in Jake's mind. He was 26 years old. He'd had plans, vague ones maybe, but plans. Military career, maybe settle down eventually, find someone. Normal human things. Now he'd outlive everyone he knew back on Earth. His friends, his family, everyone. Can it be reversed? He asked, though he already suspected the answer. No, Healer Curran said simply. The integration is complete. You are still human, Lieutenant, but you are enhanced. This cannot be undone without killing you. Actually worried about what he thought. Finally, he turned around. Tell me about this ship, about where we are, about what happens now. The Emperor wants to thank you personally for saving my life. As for the ship, this is the flagship of our fleet, and we are currently in orbit around my homeworld, as Healer Curran said. I'm supposed to meet the ruler of the Centauri Alliance. I wanted to explain everything to you myself, to tell you that I am sorry for changing you without permission, but that I would make the same choice again if faced with it. Your life matters, Jake Morrison. It matters to me. A genuine concern in those nebula eyes. She actually cared whether he lived or died. I should be angry, Jake said slowly. I should be furious that you made this choice for me, but I'm not. Maybe I will be later when it all sinks in. Right now, I'm just confused and overwhelmed and trying to figure out what my life looks like now. His body may feel strong, but it still needs time to fully integrate the changes. The healer bowed slightly and left the room with silent footsteps. Amara moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed. Ask me anything, Jake. I will answer truthfully. Because in the moment when you threw yourself on that grenade, I saw something I rarely see in the courts and politics of my world. I saw someone who acted without calculation, without thought for personal gain. You simply saw danger and responded. That kind of purity, that kind of instinct to protect, it deserves to be preserved. You deserve to live. Not like this. My father will offer you a position, I am certain of it. You saved the life of his daughter. That means something in our culture. You would be honored, respected, given a place at court. I'm just a soldier. What that something is, well, that remains to be seen. Outside the window, Centauri Prime turned slowly in the void, beautiful and mysterious. Jake's old life was gone, burned away in the same blast that should have killed him. What came next, he had no idea. But for the first time since waking, he felt something other than confusion. He felt possibility. The next morning, if it could be called morning on a ship in space, Jake woke to find formal clothing laid out for him. The garments were unlike anything he'd worn before. They looked like a blend of his Earth military dress uniform and traditional Centauri robes, somehow managing to honor both cultures without looking ridiculous. A servant, a young Centauri whose skin held patterns like rippling water, helped him dress. Jake felt awkward being waited on like this, but the servant seemed to expect it. The clothing fit perfectly, adjusting to his body in ways that human fabric never could. The material was soft but looked expensive, with threads that caught the light and shimmered. Princess Amara arrived just as the servant was finishing. She wore formal robes of white and gold, her hair arranged in an elaborate style that must have taken hours. Her skin glowed with what Jake was learning to recognize as anticipation. "You look presentable," she said with a slight smile. "Are you ready to meet my father?" "As ready as I'll ever be. Any advice?" "What he wants from you is the truth." Some wore military uniforms similar to what Amara had on. Others wore simpler clothes, probably civilians or support staff. All of them stopped and bowed as Princess Amara passed. Jake noticed they also looked at him with curiosity. A human on the royal flagship wasn't something they saw every day. Some faces showed welcome, others showed suspicion. He kept his expression neutral and his posture military straight. "They're wondering about you," Amara said quietly. "Word has spread about what you did. Some see you as a hero. Others see you as an outsider who has been given too much honor too quickly. Everything else is just details." Columns of crystal rose on either side of a long walkway that led to a raised platform. On that platform sat a throne carved from a single piece of white stone veined with blue, and on the throne sat Emperor Zarin. The emperor was tall, even for a centauri, and his presence filled the room in a way that had nothing to do with physical size. His robes were the deep black of space itself, and his eyes seemed to hold stars. Age showed in the patterns on his skin, intricate lines that spoke of centuries of life. Power radiated from him like heat from a fire. Jake had met important people before: generals, politicians, even the Earth Secretary of Defense once. None of them had this quality. This was someone who ruled billions of people across dozens of worlds, and he looked the part. Princess Amara walked forward with Jake at her side. When they reached the base of the platform, she bowed deeply. Jake did the same, adding a military salute for good measure. It seemed respectful. "Father," Amara said, her voice formal, "I present Lieutenant Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force, the human who saved my life." Those ancient eyes seemed to look through him, seeing things Jake didn't know were visible. Finally, the Emperor spoke, his voice deep and resonant. "Lieutenant Morrison, approach." Guards lined the walls, all armed, all watching him. If the Emperor decided Jake was a threat, he wouldn't make it 3 steps. But Jake had faced worse. He'd faced death itself 6 days ago. One emperor, no matter how powerful, didn't scare him as much as it probably should have. "You saved my daughter's life," Emperor Zarin said. It wasn't a question, but Jake nodded anyway. "Tell me why." "That's what I did." "You could have let my daughter's own guards handle the threat. Why did you choose to sacrifice yourself?" "And because some things are worth dying for. That made it my responsibility." Princess Amara stood at the base of the platform, her skin cycling through colors too fast for Jake to read. Then Emperor Zarin smiled. It transformed his face from stern to warm in an instant. "My daughter was correct about you. You are an interesting creature, Jake Morrison. Most beings in this galaxy act from self-interest. They calculate risk versus reward. They make decisions based on what benefits them most. But you acted on pure instinct with no thought for yourself. This is rare. This is valuable. You are owed a great debt. I hereby grant you the rank of Royal Guardian, a position that has not been filled in 3 generations. You will answer only to the royal family. You will have access to our resources, our technology, our knowledge. And you will be welcomed as a member of this court, with all the rights and privileges that entails. Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I don't know anything about your court. I'm not a diplomat or a politician. I'm just a soldier. What I need, what my daughter needs, are people who can be trusted to act without calculation. People who will do what is right rather than what is profitable. You have proven yourself to be such a person. But life rarely goes according to plan. You have been given a gift, whether you see it as such yet or not. Enhanced strength, extended life, a place of honor among the stars. What you do with these gifts is up to you. Let it be known that Jake Morrison is under the protection of the royal family. Any who harm him harm us. Any who dishonor him dishonor us. He is to be treated with the respect due to his rank and his deeds. Jake saw some faces that looked pleased, others that looked skeptical. He was going to have to prove himself here, he realized. The Emperor's decree might give him rank, but respect would have to be earned. The formal ceremony ended, and the crowd began to disperse. Princess Amara came to Jake's side, her skin showing warm gold again. "That went well," she said quietly. "My father likes you." Physical contact from the Emperor is a sign of great favor. A window showed the planet below, beautiful and alien. "I know this is overwhelming," Amara said, gesturing for Jake to sit in one of the comfortable chairs. "You have been given a position that most Centauri would spend lifetimes trying to achieve. There will be jealousy. There will be those who test you, who want to prove that you don't deserve this honor. Skeptics, certainly, but my father's word carries weight. No one will openly challenge his decree. They will simply watch you, looking for any sign of weakness or unworthiness. I don't know your customs, your politics, your history. I'm going to embarrass myself and probably you by extension. That makes you my responsibility. I won't abandon you to navigate this alone. You don't owe me anything else. It appears when we are near someone who matters to us. There are 1,000 reasons why this is impossible, but I cannot deny what I feel. You threw yourself on a grenade for me. You were willing to die for someone you barely knew. How am I supposed to not care about someone like that? That's exactly why I care. You're the first person I've met in years who acted without expecting something in return. In a court full of people who calculate every word and gesture, you're refreshingly honest." After a moment, Amara spoke again. "I won't pressure you, Jake. I know you're still adjusting to everything that's happened, but I want you to know that I'm here. Not as a princess you're sworn to protect, but as someone who wants to help you find your place in this new life." There was a kindness in her eyes, a genuine warmth that he hadn't expected from alien royalty. "I appreciate that," he said. "And for what it's worth, you're making this easier than it should be. If you're going to be a royal guardian, you need to understand our culture, our history, our ways. It won't be easy, but I think you're up for the challenge." She explained the color changes in their skin and what each shade meant. She taught him basic phrases in her language, laughing gently when his human tongue struggled with the musical sounds. She told him about the political structure of the alliance, the various noble houses, and the delicate balance of power that kept everything running. Jake absorbed it all, his enhanced mind making the learning easier than it would have been before. He asked questions, made connections, and slowly began to understand the world he'd found himself in. As the ship's artificial day cycle moved toward evening, Amara finally called a halt to the lessons. "Enough for today," she said. "You need rest, and I have duties to attend to. Tomorrow I'll introduce you to some of the court. You'll need allies here, Jake, people you can trust. Among my people, that creates a bond that cannot be broken. Whatever happens, you can trust me." This new life was strange and complicated and full of dangers he didn't fully understand yet. But for the first time since waking up on this ship, Jake felt something other than confusion or fear. He felt hope. 3 months passed in what felt like both forever and no time at all. Jake settled into his new life aboard the Starfarer and, occasionally, in the Grand Palace on Centauri Prime below. The palace was even more impressive than the ship, with towers that reached toward the twin suns and gardens that seemed to defy gravity itself. Every day brought new lessons. Amara taught him the formal language of the court, the proper way to address nobles of different ranks, and the subtle art of Centauri politics. Jake learned that a slight change in skin color could mean the difference between a friendly greeting and a veiled insult. He studied their history, their wars, their alliances and betrayals. But the hardest lessons came from Commander Hayes, the leader of the Royal Guard. Hayes was a veteran warrior with silver-streaked skin and scars that told stories of 100 battles. He took one look at Jake and decided that the human needed serious training if he was going to survive in his new role. The training sessions were brutal. Hayes pushed Jake harder than any drill instructor back on Earth ever had, but Jake's enhanced body could take it. More than that, it thrived on the challenge. He learned Centauri combat styles that used their natural grace and strength. He practiced with energy weapons that could cut through steel like paper. He sparred with the best warriors in the Royal Guard and slowly, very slowly, began to hold his own. "You're getting better," Hayes admitted one day after Jake had managed to last a full 5 minutes against him. "Still fight like a human, all aggression and direct attacks, but you're learning our techniques. Give it another year, and you might actually be dangerous." It seemed like favoritism to them, unearned privilege. But Jake won them over slowly, one interaction at a time. There was Lady Selene, an older Centauri who served as the Emperor's chief advisor. She had initially been cold to Jake, testing him with difficult questions and political traps. But when Jake answered honestly instead of trying to play her games, she warmed to him. "Refreshing," she'd said. "Someone who admits when they don't know something instead of pretending wisdom they don't possess." They spent hours discussing strategy and tactics, comparing human and Centauri approaches to warfare. Dren seemed genuinely interested in Jake's perspective, treating him as an equal rather than an outsider. But it was the time Jake spent with Princess Amara that mattered most. She continued his cultural education, yes, but their relationship had grown beyond teacher and student. They walked together in the floating gardens, talking about everything and nothing. They shared meals in private chambers, away from the formality of court dinners. They watched the twin suns set over the palace, painting the sky in colors that Earth had never seen. Jake found himself looking forward to these moments more than anything else. Amara was brilliant and funny, with a sharp wit that she hid behind royal decorum when others were around. With Jake, she let her guard down. She complained about boring state functions, laughed at his attempts to pronounce complicated Centauri words, and shared her dreams for the future of her people. And Jake was falling for her. He couldn't deny it anymore. Every time she smiled, his enhanced heart beat faster. Every time her skin shifted to that soft pink color when she looked at him, he felt warmth spread through his chest. It was complicated and probably foolish, but it was real. One evening, they sat together in one of the floating gardens, surrounded by flowers that glowed softly in the fading light. Amara wore a simple dress instead of formal robes, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked relaxed, happy. "Tell me about Earth," she said. "Your real home, what do you miss most?" "Actual Earth coffee, not whatever that substitute is that they serve here. Sports, watching games with friends and arguing about plays. My sister's terrible cooking that somehow still tasted good because it was made with love." He paused. "People who knew me before all this. Who remember when I was just Jake, not Royal Guardian Morrison." "How could I? I've seen wonders I never imagined. I've learned things no other human knows, and I've met you. You're a princess. I'm a human from a species your people barely tolerate. There are political implications and cultural barriers, and probably a dozen other reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I can't help how I feel." Her fingers were cool against his skin, but the touch sent electricity through him. "What if I told you that those complications don't matter to me, that I feel the same way you do? My father will have opinions, the court will gossip, Earth will probably have something to say about one of their soldiers romancing an alien princess. But Jake, I don't care. I've spent my whole life doing what was expected, being the perfect princess, making the right political choices. For once, I want to choose something just because it makes me happy. You make me happy, Amara confirmed. She moved closer until they were sitting side by side with their shoulders touching. You're honest and brave and kind. You see me as Amara, not just as Princess Amara. Do you know how rare that is? I'm starting to understand. Despite everything that had changed, despite being so far from home, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The peace shattered 3 days later. Jake was in his quarters, reviewing tactical reports that Captain Dren had asked him to look over, when alarms started blaring throughout the palace. His enhanced hearing picked up shouting in the corridors, the sound of running feet, weapons being drawn. He was moving before he consciously decided to, his combat training taking over. His hand went to his sidearm, one of the Centauri energy weapons he'd been training with. He activated his personal shield and stepped into the corridor. A guard ran past, barely glancing at him. Attack on the royal wing, all defenders to your positions. The corridors were chaos, with guards scrambling to respond to a threat they hadn't anticipated. He reached Amara's chambers to find the door half open and sounds of fighting inside. Jake didn't slow down. He hit the door at full speed, his enhanced strength tearing it from its frame. The scene inside made his blood run cold. 3 attackers in dark clothing, their faces covered, surrounded Princess Amara. She held an energy blade, clearly defending herself, but she was outnumbered and one of them had already wounded her. Silver blood stained her shoulder, and her skin was flickering through colors that Jake had learned meant pain and fear. But there was no time to be afraid. Jake was already moving. The first attacker didn't even see him coming. Jake's fist, enhanced by Centauri technology, caught the assassin in the side hard enough to send them flying into the wall. The second turned, energy blade slashing toward Jake's head. He ducked under it, using a move Commander Hayes had drilled into him 1,000 times, and delivered a strike to the attacker's knee that took them down hard. The third was the most dangerous. They moved with the precision of a trained killer, their blade work skilled and deadly. Jake and the assassin exchanged blows in a blur of motion, energy blade against Jake's armored forearms. The blade scored his arm, burning through his sleeve, but Jake ignored the pain. He could see Amara in his peripheral vision, leaning against the wall, her face pale. That sight filled him with a cold fury that sharpened his focus to a razor's edge. This person had hurt her. That was unacceptable. Jake caught the assassin's wrist mid-strike, his enhanced grip like iron. He twisted, hearing bones crack, and the energy blade fell from nerveless fingers. A final strike to the chest sent the attacker crashing into Amara's desk, unconscious before they hit the ground. The whole fight had lasted maybe 15 seconds. Jake rushed to Amara's side. "Are you okay? Let me see the wound." The wound wasn't deep, but it was bleeding steadily. "We need to get you to Healer Curran." The veteran warrior took in the scene, the 3 unconscious attackers, Jake standing protectively over the princess, and something that might have been approval flickered across his face. "Secure them," Hayes ordered his guards. "I want to know who sent them and how they got this far into the palace." He turned to Jake. "Well done, Guardian Morrison, the princess. She needs medical attention." Other guards were spreading through the palace, searching for more attackers. Emperor Zarin arrived with his own security detail, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Amara, are you hurt?" Jake stopped them before they could do real harm. "My family is deeply in your debt." "That speaks to character, not duty." "You disobeyed orders again," she said, but there was no anger in her voice. "Commander Hayes told you to maintain defensive positions in your sector. Instead, you ran to my chambers. Nothing else mattered." She reached out and took his hand. "I was terrified," she admitted quietly. "They came out of nowhere, I thought. I was going to die, and then you were there fighting like something out of a legend. You were magnificent. When I saw you bleeding, when I saw them threatening you, I've never felt fear like that. Not even when the grenade was about to explode. Because this time, I had something to lose." He stood and leaned over the bed, careful not to jostle her injured shoulder. "Amara, I love you. I know it's too soon and too complicated and probably completely inappropriate, but I don't care anymore. I love you. I was just afraid to say it. When people find out that the human royal guardian and the Centauri princess are in love. I like the sound of that." The investigation into the assassination attempt took 3 weeks. Commander Hayes and his team worked tirelessly, interrogating the captured attackers and tracing their connections. What they found disturbed everyone in the palace. The attack had been ordered by a faction within the Centauri nobility itself, a group that opposed Emperor Zarin's progressive policies, especially his growing alliance with Earth and other younger species. They saw Amara as a symbol of that alliance, particularly after she'd saved Jake's life with Centauri technology. By killing her, they hoped to destabilize the Emperor and push the alliance back toward isolation. The conspirators were arrested, their properties seized, their families disgraced. Emperor Zarin dealt with them publicly and harshly, making it clear that attacks on the royal family would not be tolerated. But the damage was done. The attack had revealed deep divisions within Centauri society, tensions that had been building for years. Through it all, Jake stayed close to Amara. He'd been officially assigned as her personal guardian now, a role that gave him an excuse to be near her at all times. Not that he needed an excuse anymore. Their relationship, while not publicly announced, was becoming an open secret in the palace. The court's reaction was mixed. Some found it romantic, this story of the human soldier and the alien princess. Others saw it as proof that Amara was too influenced by outsiders, too willing to abandon tradition. Jake heard the whispers, saw the disapproving looks, but he didn't care. Neither did Amara. "Let them gossip," she said one morning as they walked through the palace halls together. "They have nothing better to do with their time." She wore formal robes today, preparing for a council meeting, but her skin glowed with that warm gold color that meant happiness. "You're enjoying scandalizing them, aren't you? I've been the perfect princess my entire life. It's refreshing to do something unexpected." Jake took his position outside the door, standing guard even though a dozen other security personnel were present. It was his job, but more than that, it gave him peace of mind to know she was safe. Commander Hayes joined him after a few minutes, taking up a position on the opposite side of the door. The veteran warrior had become something like a mentor to Jake over the past months, teaching him not just combat but the intricacies of palace security. "The men respect you now," Hayes said quietly. "When you first arrived, they saw you as the Emperor's pet human. Now they see you as one of us. That fight in the princess's chambers changed their minds. You did what a warrior does. You ran toward danger instead of away from it. You protected your charge with skill and courage. That earns respect, regardless of what planet you're from." He'd been thinking about the future a lot lately, about what his life would look like a year from now, 5 years, 10 years. The enhancements meant he'd live for centuries. Would he spend all that time on Centauri Prime? What about Earth? He hadn't been back since the explosion. Hadn't even sent a message to his family. "You're troubled," Hayes observed. "Woman problems." Saw him navigate similar complications when he chose his mate. The court opposed it then too. But love has a way of overcoming obstacles if you're both willing to fight for it. Not arguing exactly, but animated discussion. Then the doors opened and Amara emerged, her skin flickering with frustration. "Walk with me," she said to Jake, not waiting for a response. They left the council chambers behind, moving through the palace until they reached one of Amara's favorite spots, a balcony that overlooked the capital city below. The twin suns were high in the sky, bathing everything in golden light. "The council wants me to make a formal alliance marriage," Amara said without preamble, "to Lord Kieran of House Stellar. They say it would unite two powerful houses and strengthen the Emperor's position after the assassination attempt." "What did you say?" "My father supported me, thanked the stars, but the council was insistent. Tradition or love? I want a life with you, whatever that looks like. They can create obstacles at every turn. What if instead of asking permission, we made it a political advantage? What better way to cement that alliance than a formal union between a Centauri princess and an Earth soldier? It's symbolic, yes, but symbols matter in politics." The council couldn't oppose it without opposing his vision for the alliance. "You're devious for someone who claims to be just a simple soldier." The formal proposal came 2 weeks later. Emperor Zarin summoned his full council, along with representatives from Earth who happened to be visiting for trade negotiations. Jake stood before them in full ceremonial armor, Amara at his side in her finest robes. "I wish to formally request permission to bond with Princess Amara," Jake announced, his voice carrying through the chamber. "Not just as a personal matter, but as a political alliance between our peoples. We see it as a historic opportunity to strengthen the bonds between our species." Jake had spent the past 2 weeks carefully explaining the situation to Ambassador Stone, making sure Earth understood the political implications. She'd been skeptical at first, but had eventually seen the value. "This is unprecedented," one council member objected. "A royal bonding with an alien. It goes against centuries of tradition. And I see the value in binding our peoples together through more than just words on treaties." No one wanted to openly defy the Emperor, especially not when Earth had already given its approval. The political calculation was clear. Opposing the bonding now would be seen as opposing the alliance with Earth itself. Lady Selene, the Emperor's chief advisor, finally spoke. "If the Emperor and the Princess are certain of this course, then the Council will support it. We have conditions, however. The ceremony must follow traditional protocols. The bonding must be recognized by both Centauri and Earth law. And any children of this union must be raised with full understanding of both cultures." "Then it is settled," Emperor Zarin declared. "Prepare for a royal bonding ceremony. Let the galaxy know that Centauri and Earth are united not just through treaties, but through family." The ceremony had to satisfy Centauri tradition while also incorporating Earth customs. Guest lists were drawn up including dignitaries from dozens of worlds. Security protocols were established and re-established, with Commander Hayes taking personal charge to ensure nothing would threaten the celebration. Jake's family was brought from Earth, his mother and sister arriving on a diplomatic vessel with eyes wide at the alien wonders around them. His mother cried when she saw him, touching his face like she couldn't believe he was real. "You look the same but different," she said. "Stronger somehow, happier. Couldn't just date a nice Earth girl, had to go fall for alien royalty." Thousands of guests filled the grand hall and the courtyards beyond, while millions more watched on broadcasts across both worlds. Jake stood at the altar in ceremonial armor that combined Earth military dress with Centauri royal style. His heart pounded as he waited, Commander Hayes beside him as his second, a role similar to a best man in Earth weddings. Then Amara appeared, and Jake forgot to breathe. She wore robes of white and gold that seemed to capture sunlight itself. Her skin glowed with colors that shifted and flowed, expressing joy too deep for words. She walked down the long aisle with her father, every eye in the hall upon her, but she looked only at Jake. When she reached him, Emperor Zarin placed her hand in Jake's. "Protect her," he said quietly. "Love her, honor her, this is all I ask." They performed the traditional Centauri bonding ritual, where they shared thoughts and feelings through a brief mental connection made possible by the enhancements in Jake's body. They also exchanged rings, a human tradition that the Centauri found charmingly symbolic. When it was done, when they were officially bonded in the eyes of both their peoples, Jake kissed his wife for the first time as her mate. The hall erupted in cheers, sounds of celebration from 100 different species all witnessing this moment. As they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, Jake thought about the path that had brought him here, an explosion that should have killed him, a sacrifice that had seemed like an ending, a princess who had refused to let him die. "What are you thinking?" Amara asked, her skin glowing warm gold. "I'm thinking that I threw myself on a grenade expecting to die," Jake said, "and instead I found a life I never imagined. I found you. And we're going to spend centuries together, building bridges between our worlds and making our own place among the stars." They emerged from the palace into sunlight and celebration, into a future built on sacrifice and saved by love. The human soldier who had taken a blast for a princess had awakened among alien royalty. But more than that, he had found home in the most unexpected place in the galaxy. And as the twin suns set over Centauri Prime, painting the sky in impossible colors, Jake and Amara began their forever together.